No, what I'm saying is the morning is good because we all woke up alive. However, the morning will be better when we all wake up in heaven with Jesus. That will be a really good morning. Well, thank you for letting me come. I pray that I will not speak too quickly so that you can understand what I'm saying, so that you can understand what I am saying. So I'll try to speak slowly. I'm thinking of many journeys to Sikkim. Sikkim is it's a state of India. It borders China. It's to the east of Nepal and to the west of Bhutan. And it's a very small state. And in this state, over 100 years ago, evangelical Presbyterian missionaries planted a church there, Scottish missionaries. And this church was growing nicely because the missionary pastors were always there. But when India gained her independence in 1948, they began pushing out the missionaries. And so this church gradually fell into disrepair. It got smaller and smaller and smaller, and the congregations got older and older and older. Maybe you're familiar with this. And I was invited to go there in 1998 and 1999, and when I went, it was wonderful to see God had visited his church. And people were coming to the Lord. Hindus were coming to the Lord in large numbers, one by one, and growing, and the Lord did some wonderful, wonderful things. So it's delightful to be with Presbyterian friends again. I was sharing with the pastor when I was a little boy, my parents did not go to church, but if they went to church, they went to a Presbyterian church. So I have some roots here. I thought that we could look at David, King David, who was beloved by God, a man after God's own heart. And King David, as we're told in 1 Kings, he did everything that was right towards the Lord, except in the case of Uriah the Hittite. King David did everything right in the eyes of God. God loved him, except in the case of Uriah the Hittite. So I got to thinking, I know you read from chapter 12, but perhaps we can just get the history of what was going on in 2 Samuel chapter 11, beginning with David and, of course, not shower Sheba, but bath Sheba. You know the difference between a shower and a bath, right? Okay. Shower Sheba? No, it's bath Sheba. So just remember that. So in the spring of the year, we read in verse 1, the time when kings go out to battle. In the King James Version, it says, at the time when kings go off to war. There's a time in the spring of the year when the conditions were good and you could go and fight with your enemies. And David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, all the soldiers of Israel. And they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. Sad words follow, but David remained at Jerusalem. Beloved, there's a time when you and I need to be active for the Lord. And maybe we encourage everyone else to go, but we choose to sit back and sit out instead of leaning forward into God's work. I don't know about you, but I know for me, some days as I'm getting older, I was born in 1943, so just before the end of World War II, and so I'll have my 82nd year concludes in December, and I begin year number 83. So it's easy when you get old to sit back, but it's also easy when you get young to sit back. And King David sat back from the battle. He's the leader. He's the one who killed Goliath. He's the commander. And he sits back and says, sige na, you go ahead. And they went. Well, it happened late one afternoon. Isn't it interesting how God in the Bible often says, and it so happened that. You know, it seems like it was coincidental occurrence. It just happened. Well, it happened late one afternoon, verse 2, when David arose from his bed or his couch, and he was walking on the roof of the king's house. So King David is the king. And the palace is his palace. And the king is allowed to walk on the top of his palace when he wants to. He's the king. He's the king. But he should be at the battle. But he's not at the battle. He's just taking a good afternoon walk around the top of the palace. And what do we read? That he saw from the roof a woman bathing. Now let me ask you, how many of you are from the Philippines? Yeah, okay. So how many of you, when you take a bath, are familiar with this sound? How many of you are familiar with this sound? What is this sound? Right? 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 So he knows. Now, here's my question. He goes to the edge of the roof to look. So what is he looking for? A man taking a bath? I don't think so. Most of the men are off fighting in the battle. There are certainly some men there. But the king is the king. And it's his palace, his roof. And he chooses to look and to see who's taking a bath. So think about it. You know, he could have said, oh, somebody's taking a bath. I'll come back later. But no, he wants to go and look and see. And of course, what did he see? He saw from the roof a woman bathing. And the woman was very beautiful. Now, how did he know she was very beautiful? You know, have you ever looked at something? You know, he took a good look. He's the king. It's his palace. It's his roof. He's allowed to look where he wants to look. But what is he looking at? Another man's wife. He's looking at a naked woman taking a bath. And, right? And David sent. He wanted to know about the woman. And someone said, is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Now, Uriah the Hittite, Uriah was one of King David's 30 men. He had more than 30, but there was 30 men who were his closest bodyguards. I know in the Philippines, the president doesn't need bodyguards, but King David needed in the Philippines, does the president have? Really? Tell me about it. Oh, yeah. He probably doesn't have 30. He might have 300. Who knows how many he has, right? So this Uriah is one of your bodyguards, and Uriah is out fighting the battle, and this is his wife, O king. So David sent messengers, and he took her. And she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she was purifying herself from her uncleanness, her monthly uncleanness. And after he lay with her, she returned to her house. And then the bad news, verse 5. The woman conceived, and she sent and told David, I'm pregnant. By the way, O king, I'm pregnant. You know, God says this, be sure and know your sin will find you out. Be sure and know your sin will find you out. And that's true for us, isn't it? We think, oh, nobody knows. God knows. God knows, and soon maybe everybody knows. So it's important to keep ourselves marching straight towards Jesus. Well, David sent word to Joab, the commander of his army, send Uriah the Hittite, send him back. Joab sent Uriah to David, and when Uriah came, how's the war going? Good that you came. I'm so glad that you came. How's the war going? Everything okay there? Yeah, I mean, Uriah is fighting the battle. And Joab says, hey, the king wants to see you. Go. So he hurries up and the king says, how's everything going? And then he says what? What's the next thing he says? Then David said, verse 8. Is that 8? 8, yeah. It's getting hard to see in these days. So then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. This is called a cover-up. Right? So Uriah went down to the king's house, went out of the king's house, and there followed him a present from the king. I'm fighting the battle. The king says, send me back. I go back and say, yes, sir, I'm here. What is it you need? And he says, go and wash your feet and go home and, have a nice sleep with your wife. Right? Cover up. Cover up. When we know about this from God, governments are often in the business of cover up. So we're familiar with this, right? So, but the problem is, the great problem in verse 8 is Uriah went out of the king's house and the king sent a present after him. But 9, Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of the king, and he did not go down to his house. So my perfect plan, my cover-up operation is not working. So what happens? The servants told David, Uriah did not go down to his house. And David said to Uriah, didn't you come on a long journey? Why didn't you go down to your house? And Uriah was a man of honor, and he said to David in verse 11, the ark of the covenant, and Israel and Judah dwelling in booths, and my lord Joab, the commander of the army, and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go and sleep with my wife? Eat and drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing. A man of honor, Uriah, facing a king who's done this terrible thing. A king whom God says is a man after my own heart. Are you a person after God's own heart? Is there something in your life that you've tried to just, sort of cover up? Yeah. Yes. So then, verse 12, David said to Uriah, well, you stay here today also, and tomorrow I'll send you back. Again, Uriah is thinking, why am I here? Why am I here? I should be fighting the battle, and somehow I'm here, and the king keeps trying to send me to my wife. Think about it. And he doesn't know. He doesn't know. She didn't tell him. She told David, right? So then David said, you stay here, and then tomorrow I'll send you back. So verse 13, and David invited him that night, and he ate in his presence and drank so that David made him drunk. And in the evening, okay, he's drunk, and off he goes to home. And King David says, good, I got him now. And sure enough, he reaches the gate of the city, and he falls asleep with the soldiers. He's not going to go home. Be sure and know your sin will find you out, and your cover-up plan just might not work. So David was in the morning. They informed him he didn't go home. So in verse 14, in the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab, the commander of the army, and he gave the letter to Uriah. And he said, take this back to Joab. I'm a faithful soldier. I'm one of the defenders of the king. I'm his bodyguard man. I've come in obedience to his order to come. He has nothing to say to me. And now he gets me drunk too nice, and he sends me back with a letter to the general. No issue about how's the war going on. Do we need more supplies? Do we need more soldiers? Nothing. I mean, Uriah must be wondering, what is going on? And so he wrote in his letter, verse 15, put Uriah in the front of the hardest fighting, and then pull back from him so that he may be struck down and killed. This is his faithful follower, his faithful defender, the man who would give his life for the king. And sometimes we have Christians who would give their life and we do dirty things to them. Yeah. Well, so what happened? He goes back, and Joab assigned him to a place where he knew there were valiant fighting warrior men. And verse 17, the men of the city came out and they fought with Joab, and some of the servants of David among the people fell, and Uriah the Hittite also died. Mission accomplished. I'm safe. Right? So Joab sent and he told David all the news about the fighting. And he told the messenger, when you have finished telling all the news about the fighting, then if the king gets angry, his anger rises. And if he says to you, why did you go so near the city? Did you not know they would shoot from the wall? Who killed Abimelech and the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman throw a huge upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died at Thebes? Why did you go so near the wall? Then you shall say to the king, and also your majesty, your servant Uriah is dead. So the messenger went, and he came, verse 22, and told David all that Joab had sent him to tell. The messenger said to David, the men gained an advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers, the people shooting arrows, shot an arrow at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. David said to the messenger, listen to this, the man of God says to him, well, verse 25, thus shall, beg your pardon, so where is it? David said to him, verse 25, thus shall you say to Joab, don't let this matter disturb you or displease you. The sword devours now one and now another. People get killed in battle. He sent the order, make sure you put this man at the hottest place. The faithful Uriah, a warrior, a leader. Put him there. Let him get killed. Bullets fly in war and people get killed. Just say that to Joab so he will not be deeply distressed. The cover-up of King David is amazing. Amazing how he's able to hide from the truth of what he's done. Maybe you know about this yourself. Well, in verse 26, when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead, she lamented over her husband. This is Bathsheba, wept and cried over her husband. And when the mourning was over, mourning, not M-O-R-M-O-U-R, when she was finished weeping, David sent and brought her to his house, and she became his wife, and she bore him a son. The most important words. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. So we may cover up and do everything beautifully, and we come to church and we smile and we do everything just great, but maybe there's something lurking inside us. Some unconfessed sin before the Lord. Some person that we've wounded years ago, or maybe recently, or something that we're hiding, and we've never really brought it to the Lord and said, "Oh, Master, I'm so sorry. How about you?" Well, then, of course, you read earlier from chapter 12, Nathan. By the way, the name, all my life, before I became a Christian, I hated my name. My name was not Bill or Tom or Dick or Harry. My mother and father named me Jonathan. Jonathan. What kind of name is Jonathan? I mean, wow, I don't know. I mean, that's just not a normal name, you know. So I've always been called Jay. My father called me Jay. So I had blue eyes and I had blue jay birds, and I think that's why he called me Jay. But Jonathan. Oh, what an awful name. And then I came to discover Jonathan is two words together. Yah, from Jehovah, Natan, which means the gift. The gift. So my parents were not believers, but they gave this name a gift from God, or God's gift. Amazing. Now, when I became a follower of Jesus, I was shocked. Amazing. Well, this man's name is Nathan, which means what? The gift. We all need a gift like a Nathan in our lives. Someone who will tell us the truth. We all need that. And maybe in a cultural way, everybody knows a certain thing, but nobody dares say it, and everybody keeps quiet, and the bahal just continues to grow and grow. You know, in Indonesia they say bau, but here you say bahal. So you know that the Lord sent Nathan to David. David didn't invite him. He said, "Hey, go over there and see the king." Now, Nathan was a prophet. And he talks about this story that you read earlier. Two men in a certain city, one is rich, the other is poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing. He had just one little ewe lamb that he just loved. You know, it was like his daughter. And he slept with her at night, you know, the warm little sheep. This is the poor man, it's all he had. He didn't have, you know, a mobile phone. He didn't have television. You know, he just had this little ewe lamb. And he brought the lamb up, and it grew up with him and his children. It used to eat from the table and drink from his cup, and it lay in his arm. It was like a daughter to him. Verse 4, now there came a traveler to the rich man, and the rich man was unwilling to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare for the guest who had come to him. But he took the poor man's lamb, and he cooked it. He prepared it for the man who had come to him. Then David's anger was greatly kindled. His anger he got against the man. He said, "As the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. And he shall restore that lamb fourfold, because he did this thing and because he had no pity." Hello, who's talking? King David had no pity. So that man should die. He had no pity. And Nathan, the gift from God, said, "You're the man." Right? You're the one. It's you. Wow. And then he asks in verse 9, "Why have you despised the word of the Lord, to do what is evil in his sight? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword. You've taken his wife to be your wife, and you killed him with the sword of the enemy, the Ammonites. Now, therefore, the sword will never depart from your home." And finally, in verse 12, Nathan says, "You did it secretly." Speaking for God, "You did it secretly, but I will do this correction before all Israel." So then David says to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." Wonderful confession. Is there anything in your life today where the Lord is saying, "You're the one. It's you. It's you"? Is he saying that to you? It's you. You're the one who did this. And then perhaps you need to say, "I've sinned against you, oh God. I've sinned against you, against heaven and against you. And Nathan said, the Lord also has put away your sin. You shall not die. Confess our sins to the Father. You know, in a Presbyterian church, a Baptist church, a Methodist church, many churches, we are not really a confessing church. The Roman Catholic Church is a confessing church. But they're confessing to the priest, not to the Father. But you understand what I'm saying? We tend to, you know, when in American Army we say, suck it up. You know, just suck it up. And we don't really become honest with God or with other people. So as he searches our hearts this morning, let us just think, Lord, what is it that I need to say to you? I'm sorry. I've sinned against heaven and against you. Is there anything in your life today? Are you the one? Are you the man? Are you the woman? Maybe you gossiped about somebody and it spoiled their reputation and they've been wounded ever since. Is it you? Oh, beloved, I pray that you might know that God has put away your sin, but we need to give that sin to him. Say, Lord, I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. Well, he says in verse 14, nevertheless, because by this deed you have utterly scorned the Lord, the child who is born to you shall die. And that's what happened. The baby died. There was a consequence. And I mentioned before that in 2 Kings chapter 15, verse 5, we read that David did everything that was right in the sight of God, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. Interestingly, he doesn't say in the case of Bathsheba, but in the case of Uriah. He sinned against his own servant, his own man. And then he lied to cover it up. And then he plotted the death of his own faithful servant. All because he, as the king, had the privilege to look over the roof and see someone, but he didn't have the courage to say, oh, excuse me, not for me to see. So we make those decisions in our life, don't we? We look at something we shouldn't look at, we do something we shouldn't be doing, and we know, but we do it anyway. And so let us give that to the Lord and cry out to him and say, oh God, forgive me, I'm sorry. Well, time has gone by, and this is God's word. I pray that we'll take a note here, take notice. And if there's something you need to straighten out with the Lord, do it now. Do it now. We have time. Do it now. And you'll have that. You shall know the truth, Jesus said. And the truth shall make you. The truth shall make you free. Praise God. Amen.